Hi everyone, my name is Alina Islam and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. Thank you very much for joining us. For our webinar today, I would like to introduce Delta Resources to you. They are focused on advancing the highly prospective Delta 1 gold project near Thunder Bay, Ontario. To talk about recent developments as well as upcoming plans for Delta 1, we have with us André Tessier, President and CEO. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them into the chat box and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. But before we get started, I do need to mention the fine print. For Delta Resources, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this webinar. Please read the cautionary note on page 2 of the Delta Resources corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Delta Resources specific disclosures. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Andre. Please take it away.
Thanks very much for everyone being here this afternoon. We've got a really exciting project that we want to discuss with you guys today. And now let's get started. There. So this is Delta as a crow flies. So we are Canadian explorers exploring in Canada, mostly exploring in Ontario, where our flagship is. We have 106 million shares outstanding, 13 million market cap or so, and good liquidity in the month of October, 386,000 a day. Now, at the end of 2022, Delta made a pretty fantastic discovery. The discovery actually earned us the Discovery of the Year in Ontario, and this discovery, and I don't want to offend anyone, but this discovery is not in a remote African country. It's not at the top of the Andes, or it's not at a fly-in destination, in the frozen tundra. This discovery was made right next to the Trans-Canada Highway, and that means very high quality ounces. So this is where we are. The Delta, we have actually two projects, but this is the project that I'll be talking about. It's the Delta 1 project in Northern Ontario. And as you can see here, we are located 50 kilometers west of the city of Thunder Bay. It's a port city on Lake Superior. And about 150,000 people living there. Great population, pro mining. And if we zoom in now onto the property, you will see that we now we own or have the right to explore over 308 square kilometers. So the property is huge, but most importantly, what you'll notice is that we are right next to the Trans-Canada Highway right here, and I'll show you some better slides a little later on. We also have some power lines, two power lines already on the property, but this third one here is called the Waasigan power line. It's a proposed high voltage transmission line that's coming up within the next couple of years. So in terms of infrastructure, it really does not get any better than this. And that is a key takeaway from who we are at Delta Resources. Now let's take a look at it, and this is going to second my statement a few minutes ago. So we are now looking towards the north in a drone, and the Trans-Canada Highway goes along right here. Now, if I had to draw the surface expression of the deposit, it would be pretty much right here. So, like I said, it's right next to the highway. You may not be able to see it here very well, but it's actually a topographic high. So the topographic high means that the rocks are generally exposed or very close to surface. And one thing you'll notice as well is a lot of the area has already been logged. So, it's on first or second cut. If we look to the west, more of the same next to the highway. A lot of the area has been clear cut. And if we look to the east, we even have a cell phone tower on the property. So in terms of infrastructure, in terms of environmental assessment, we are not in an environmentally sensitive area. We are right next to the Trans-Canada Highway, 45 minutes away from the city of Thunder Bay. In terms of CapEx, when this is going to become a mine, it's going to be at a reduced cost, or at minimizing the CapEx costs. So that said, let's go take a look at the deposit. So again, we are looking north. This is the Trans-Canada Highway right here. And I just have a soccer pitch here for the soccer fans to give you an idea of the scale of this deposit. So we're going to go underground. And again, we are looking north now. And at the end of 2003, we did basically an internal resource estimate, if you will, where we calculated the amount of gold that we figured that we have. Now, we cannot call this a 43-101, and that's because the spacing between certain drill holes is a little bit too wide to be considered as 43-101. But that said, it was done in the same way. So we're looking at a 2-kilometer strike length. At the time, it was a vertical extent of about 250 meters and anywhere between 10 and 85 meters of true width. Now, what we used is the cutoff grade of 0.3 grams per ton gold, and we cut all of our high assays down to 10 grams per ton gold to be conservative. And what we were looking at is, I guess the TSX is asking us, because we can't consider it 43-101, we are looking at basically a drill-defined target that has anywhere between 1.2 to 2.2 million ounces, grading, again, anywhere between 1.05 to 1.27 grams per ton gold. Now, the other important thing to note is this high-grade core here, and we can tell there's a nice rake to the mineralization. And as you can see, from the color scheme, the great majority of the grade within that core is, between 1 or above 1 grams per ton gold. And, needless to say, there's also intercepts in there, for example, of 10 meters of 15 grams, 31 meters of 5.9 grams. So that is located in the core of that mineralization. So if and when this becomes a mine, an open pit scenario, because it's right at surface, this would be where the starter pit would happen. And that's when whoever mines this will eventually get their money, their payback really quickly. Now, if we look, this is an isometric view. We're looking north-northeast. So you can see the deposits, right at the surface right here. And what you can see also is the additional drilling that we've done. So in 2008, so this gold inventory that we calculated was based on 25,000 meters. We've added in 2024 about 10,000 meters. And what we've done is we've extended the deposit by about 500 meters. And I'll show you on another slide. It's better on another slide, but we've also deepened the deposit by about 50 meters. So now we're looking at about 2.5 kilometers strike length and 300 meters vertical depth. If we're looking down, what I really wanted to point out here are two things. In 2024, we've intersected some new zones in the footwall of the known mineralization, and those are higher grain material in one case. In this area right here, it's actually only a meter wide, but it's 6 and 11 grams. We only have 2 intercepts so far in this area. So there's still a lot of exploration to do. In this area right here, we intersected 75 meters of 0.24, which is a little bit low grade, but it's a wide zone, and as you can see, it's really never been tested on strike. So these are parallel zones that are wide open in every direction. Now, if we look towards the east, so now we've done a cross section, we're looking towards the east, and the north is in that direction here. What you can see is the dip of the deposit is very steeply dipping towards the north. And like I said earlier, we've intercepted now, or we've extended the mineralization at depth by about another 50 meters to 300 meters vertical. Now, where are we? We're actually in what is called the Shabandawan Greenstone Belt. The Shabandawan Greenstone Belt, just like many in the Archean or many in the Canadian Shield. And the Eureka deposit actually falls on a structure that's called the Shabandawan Structural Zone. That marks the northern limit of this greenstone belt. So it's a crustal scale structure, and you can see it's gold endowed. Like all the stars are actually a gold deposit. And number 2 here is the Moss Lake deposit, and it's sitting at about 6 million ounces. So there's really no reason why the Eureka zone couldn't contain the same amount of gold. Now, we've expanded the property, as I mentioned before, and we now own two parallel structures, but we own about 35 kilometers of strike length of these structures. We'll discuss those a little later in the presentation. Now, I was told there's going to be some technical people here, so bear with us, those who are not technical. But this is the deposit here. So it's the geology of the deposit. What you see in the hashed white, the dashed white lines here is the Shabandawan Structural Zone. And in dark blue here are sediments that are called Temiskaming type sediments. And those are younger sediments. And really what it means is that the Shabandawan Structural Zone has juxtaposed rocks that are very young, or youngish, if you will, and the greenstone belt itself. And this is what we call an unconformity, and that becomes very important because it's actually a structural control to this gold deposit. Now, the zone, the Shabandawan Structural Zone, is about 500 meters wide. And so far, we've seen it, or we've documented it over well over 5 kilometers of strike length. So within that zone, rocks are incredibly altered. They are low-grade gold mineralization. So there's this gold halo around the mineralization, and this pyritized halo as well. And the size of this alteration package is letting us think that we're dealing with a large system that has the potential of multi-million ounces. This is what the mineralization looks like. This is from our drill hole number 30. We intercepted over 2 grams, over 66 meters in this drill hole. The mineralization is what we call a stockwork of quartz, anchorite, other carbonates, a little bit of disseminated pyrite, and the odd visible gold in there. You also see occasionally some arsenopyrite. And the arrows here are pointing to the veins that are mineralized. So the density of veinlets is essential for the gold mineralization. This is in more detail. The same quartz veins, those veinlets range anywhere between 1 millimeter to 3 centimeters. You occasionally get a much larger quartz vein, up to 4 meters we've seen. But this is the bulk of our mineralization. It occurs in every rock type. So every rock type is intensely mineralized, and every rock type is altered, which is also a proof of how important the system is. Now, that stockwork of mineralization shows many, many generations of veinlets, and I'm only showing this here as an example. So when you see V1, V2, V3, that means the vein 1 is a first generation, second generation, and third generation. And in my opinion, there's two very important factors to create large ore deposits, or large gold deposits in this case. One is the size and the intensity of the alteration. And we've already seen the size with the earlier slide. The intensity is coming. And here, the second is how long-lived is our system. And here, having all these veinlets cross-cutting each other is letting us know that we have a long-lived system. Again, that is an indication that this system is large, long-lived, and has the potential of being multi-million ounces. So let's take a look at the alteration very quickly. The alteration, for those technical folks here, is anchorite, silicification, albitization, cerussitization. We have our fresh mafic, feldspar-ferric mafic rock at the top, and as you go down, it gets more and more altered and mineralized when you start seeing the stockwork. So you can see how intense the alteration is. It completely obliterates the textures of the host rock. Now we're going to take a look at the exact same thing, but in this case, we have monzonite dikes within the deposit. And again, you can see the fresh version at the top here going altered towards down and then mineralized over here. So again, the alteration is so intense that it completely obliterates the rock types. It obliterates every rock type in the deposit, and it's extremely intense. So altogether, these are indications that this gold deposit has the potential, is a large system, and has the potential to host multi-million ounces. Now, very quickly, and this is very preliminary because we've only drilled so far 35,000 meters, but we're already drawing some similarities with the Canadian Malartic deposit in terms of the geological setting, the timing, and the type of gold mineralization that we see. The alteration is very similar, and well, the size, yet to be seen, but we're hoping. And just to illustrate this, so this is a longitudinal section of the Canadian Malartic deposit. Canadian Malartic deposit is over 11 million ounces of gold. As you can see, it stretches for a very long strike length, and it goes very deep and is still open at depth. Now, if I juxtapose the Delta 1 deposit, or the Eureka gold deposit, to this, so all of the drill holes ever drilled on our property so far are on here. And this is just to illustrate, these deposits are large, they're large systems, and we are just barely scratching the surface at this deposit. So in the next phase of drilling, one of the objectives will be to enhance or to increase the gold inventory at the Delta 1 or at the Eureka gold deposit. Now, you may have seen in the news recently that we've acquired a few properties in the area, and we just want to give you an idea of why we have done this. So this is the site of the Eureka gold deposit right here, and as I mentioned, it occurs at within that structural zone at an unconformity between Temiskaming type sediments. Here they're shown in yellow, and the volcano-sedimentary belt that you see here in green. So we could see that the Ontario Geological Survey had mapped some Temiskaming type sediments in yellow to the south. We went and verified, and we're satisfied that they are. And what this means is that we are repeating the exact same geological context over 35 kilometers and more on at least 2 or 3 structures in the southern portion of this greenstone belt. Now, this is important for many reasons, and a bit of the history of the belt comes into play here. So over here is I'll go in blue, there we go. Over here is the Inco Shabandawan mine. This was a copper nickel mine, and the whole belt was known as a copper nickel belt for decades. Now, Inco being the large company, they had the monopoly in there. Basically they owned the belt, but they were exploring for copper nickel. However, in late '87, Inco decided to form a subsidiary called Inco Gold. Inco Gold was formed because the price of gold at the time had gone up to $800 an ounce, and they figured they might as well explore for gold. So Inco Gold started exploring in this belt in 1988. And they explored in 1989. And then in 1990, Inco Gold was dissolved and sold to TVX Mines. TVX kept all the producing assets, and it's either Inco or TVX that made the corporate decision of dropping all of the exploration projects that Inco Gold had. So Inco, in the end, left us with some pretty amazing discoveries. Here is the I zone sector, the south zone sector here, and the Kuki Moose Calf sector here. Kuki and Moose Calf was not discovered by Inco, but the other two were. And we're going to just take a quick look at the type of intercepts or the type of showings or gold occurrence that they left us with. So, and I will go in more detail with the I zone here, but you can see the grades that were intercepted in drill core here, and you can see how really interested they were, because they actually did a cyanidation test to test the gold recoveries there, and obtained 96% gold recoveries. The Mengold small junior came in just before the crash of 2008, took a 1,000 kilogram mini bulk sample that returned 9.9 grams per ton gold. And this was all reconnaissance work. So it's grassroots exploration conducted by Inco Gold. And here at the south zone, they intersected 0.7 over 39 meters. And at Kuki, they intercepted 1.15 over 15.5 meters. These are all economic grades over economic widths. On the south zone, I would say if more of it is proven. But it's a pretty darn good start for an exploration project at the scale of this property. Yeah, literally, we now control half of the greenstone belt here. Now, let's zoom in here on the I zone right here. So at the scale of this map, it doesn't seem like much, but if we take a closer look at it, and I hope you can see the types of grades that we're getting here, but we've got, this is a strike length here of 3 kilometers. Sorry, 3 kilometers right here. So over 3 kilometers, you've got a number of gold occurrences, and they are dikes, they're mineralized dikes that are associated with an intrusion a little bit more to the west. The intrusion to the west has not been tested whatsoever. There's not a single drill hole in here, but you can see the AF zone, for example. 58 grab samples were more than 1 gram, 39 were more than 3 grams, 15 were more than 18 grams, 11 were more than 30 grams. This is right here. 3 kilometers further at the I zone, we had these intercepts of 3.5 over 17 meters, 4.3 over 41, 4.5 over 14. You get the idea. These are very, very significant gold occurrences over 3.5 kilometers of strike length, occurring in a geological setting that's very similar to where we've shown about 2 million ounces at the Delta, at the Eureka gold deposit. So this type of gold occurrence is going to be the focus of our exploration program in 2024 when we step out, or sorry, in late 2024 and 2025 when we step out of the Eureka Gold Zone area. So really the takeaways about Delta, the main one is our location. We are in an amazing jurisdiction in Canada. We're immediately adjacent to the Trans-Canada Highway and other infrastructure, including power lines, and that will minimize the environmental impact and also minimize the capex when this goes into production. That's why we're thinking, these are high quality gold ounces right at surface. We also, we already have this gold deposit with multi-million ounces. And we're now controlling a land position in basically half of a greenstone belt that is very underexplored. And we are covering about 308 square kilometers of that property. Now we have 35,000 meters drilled so far at the Eureka gold deposit, which is very little. But we're at the property scale, we are only getting started. So that's who we are, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thanks a lot, Andre. That was a great presentation. So we've got a couple of questions already. Couple of them actually about drilling and when you expect to see drills turning again.
Well, we're hoping to start drilling, just logistically, we're hoping to start drilling in January. The main reason for that is, some of these properties you probably saw, but some of them we acquired last week or 2 weeks ago. So we're right now in the permitting phase of these properties. It should be, those are fairly small. We've permitted, or we've applied for the permits for the larger ones, and we expect to have responses from First Nations and stakeholders by the end of this year, and that will allow us to start drilling. Plus, logistically, to bring in the drills just before Christmas, halt everything for 3 weeks, thaw everything, and start over again. It's a lot easier to start after the holidays.
So, which targets are you looking at outside of Eureka?
Outside of Eureka, those large shear zones are one of the targets that we have. Interestingly enough, one of the properties that we acquired was acquired from a gentleman whose name is John Turnowski. John has passed away, but before passing away, he had commandeered a VTEM survey on this property. And there's some amazing geophysical anomalies that correspond with those fault-bounded basins that we are targeting. So those will be some prime targets that we'll be testing.
Okay. A question about your financing. How are you progressing with the financing?
Well, we currently have about 2.3 million in the kitty, which is enough to get us started. I think the idea is, we would like to secure more money before the drilling starts. But right now we have enough to get started, and we're hoping that we'll supplement that through the exercise of warrants that we have available right now, and those warrants are expiring in December.
Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, you have been, expanding the land package. So can we expect to see more acquisitions and an increase in the size of the package?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of companies and prospectors are coming out of the woodwork now, wanting to offer their property to Delta, and we're at this point we're being fairly selective. I think we have a pretty darn large land package right now. Like I said, we're controlling basically half of the belt on the eastern side. So we'll start with what we have. at this point, and if other opportunities arise, we'll probably look into them. Yeah.
Can you maybe talk about what exploration you have planned at some of the other target areas, aside from drilling?
Aside from drilling, we've already done some till sampling. So we've started with the till sampling. We've been successful with till sampling in the past. We did a phase of till sampling in the spring of this year, and we've got some nice dispersion trails to test. But we've also just finished an additional 144 till samples, covering nearly all of the western portion of the property. So those results should be coming in, I suspect, in Q1 of 2025. And we're also right now doing some induced polarization surveys on some of these targets, just to better refine our targets.
Any met work planned?
We're currently working on the metallurgical work. We're working with ALS, and we're just waiting for their final results. So
when could we expect to see those results?
We were hoping in August, but yeah, I'm hoping before the year end. Yes.
Okay. Just going back to the exploration, there's a question here on what your budget will look like if you had to split it between Eureka and new areas of interest.
Right now, I think we're looking to split about 50-50. Honestly, the objective at Eureka is to increase the footprint of the deposit, both laterally and vertically. So we want to test that high grade rake of the mineralization at depth, and we want to test some of these targets that we have east and west of the deposit. You may have seen we've just acquired a property from Metals Creek, and on their property, just an initial drill hole, got I think 0.4 over 41 meters. These are the types of intercepts that we got when we first started drilling at the Delta 1 deposit in 2019. So yeah, these are great indication that the system continues in that direction.
Okay. A question here: are any majors showing interest?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you. We currently have 7 majors and intermediate producers that are under NDA with Delta. Some of them have come to the properties. All of them have the database, and they're evaluating the property, or they're just continuing to evaluate the property. Yeah, it's important to say that we're in the early stages here, so it's understandable that majors or intermediate are waiting a bit to get more more security or in what we have. But that said, the interest is high, and yeah, they've several of them are. Yeah, we're very close to at this point.
Okay, so on Eureka, I guess, when you're looking at drilling, you're talking about expanding the footprint of Eureka, but is there a plan to maybe get a 43-101 on the books, or not on the cards for 2025?
Honestly, I think we really have 2 camps, and on the one hand, we have people who say, well, you should really get the 43-101 done. That way, your valuation will be based on the number of ounces that you prove. And then you've got camp number 2 that is saying, listen, there's a lot of companies lately have put out 43-101s, and they've been penalized for it in the markets, or they've been punished. in our case, to actually get a 43-101, we would have to really increase the drilling in the deposit to tighten it, and that would be we're probably looking at about $7 million to do this. Right now, we feel at Delta that we are best served by increasing the footprint of the deposit and by showing just how big this zone can be. And when the time comes, then when we find the limits of the ore body, then we'll probably start looking at a 43-101. But that's down the road, and I don't think that'll be in 2025. Right now, we're planning about 10,000 meters of drilling so far on the property as a whole. So there's going to be at least 5,000 meters on your 5,000 meters on some of our high value targets.
All right. Another question on your drilling. How many are considered duds? Seems like almost all holes have hit mineralization. Is that true?
So far, and I know because I've had this question asked just lately by an analyst, we have a hit rate of almost 80%. And that's including the drilling that we've done before call it the discovery. So we did a phase of drilling in 2019, and we got what we consider pretty good sniffs of mineralization, pretty good indications. We did another drill phase in 2021, and we don't consider those holes to have hit the zone, or only a few of them have actually hit the zone, or what we now consider to be the zone. So altogether, we're hitting on about 80% of our drill holes in the zone, and that translates with about 35,000 meters. That translates to a discovery cost of about $5 Canadian per ounce of gold.
All right. Another question here, Andre, on additional targets. Do you think other geophysics can help with refining additional targets? What type, and what could your budget look like?
In terms of there must be a geophysicist in the crowd. In terms of geophysics, IP seems to work very well. The limitation that we have at Eureka, it's the infrastructure is a blessing, but it can also be a bit of a curse because we have these two power lines basically on either sides of the deposit, and because we've got the Trans-Canada Highway there, some of the geophysical methods are not as easy to interpret or as easy to carry out. We've tried IP, and it seems to work for the resistivity, but the chargeability is a little bit difficult to interpret. Now we're trying it out in other areas of the property, and it seems to work well. The drill bits will let us know if it's if they are truly defining the targets that we are hoping for.
Okay, Andre, can you confirm there are no exploration commitments or spending obligations on the property?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. We've acquired all of these properties with the specific requirement of not having to do any work on them. So we do have some cash payments to come, about $400,000 next year, I think over the next 2 years, and then we'll own the package 100%. But in terms of work commitments, we have zero work commitments. And that's important because if you have a small property on the package that requires $1 million of exploration, then you're required to direct your funds in that area. In our case, we can really direct the funds where they are needed, where we feel that the best potential is.
What about royalties?
There are royalties pretty much throughout the property. We've tried to maximize it at 2% NSR. There is a few properties where there are underlying agreements that bring the NSR a bit over 2%. But in general, we can buy back at least half of it, and in some cases, we can buy back 100% of it.
Okay, I think that's it for the Q&A, Andre. Thanks a lot for taking time to host this webinar with us today.
Well, thanks very much for to you, and yeah, again for saving me having to read the forward-looking statements, and thanks very much to everybody who's on this webinar. I hope we're able to get you as excited as we are.
Just as a reminder to our audience, our next webinar will feature Fathom Nickel, and that's tomorrow, November 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in with us, everyone. Have a great day.